Well, how is the government dealing with this so far? Joining me is Bronwen Maddox, Director of the Institute for Government, and Sir Craig Oliver, former Communications Director to David Cameron. Good evening to you both. Sir Craig, looking at it from the outside in as opposed to the inside out, what do you make of the government's performance today?
Well, I think if you speak privately to people in government, they would accept that mistakes have been made. They think that testing has been way too slow. They also think that when pubs, clubs and restaurants were closed, it was too early before you actually had a plan to rescue and save them. But the reality of government is that you're facing the most difficult circumstances ever in peacetime. Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. And people are often looking at things with very limited information, choices that are not clear, or if there is a choice, it's between bad and worse. So I think they are in an incredibly difficult situation. But what you really got a sense today was watching Matt Hancock in that press conference was of a grip being tightened. And I think that there is some confidence that by the end of the month that they think that they can really get on top of the testing.
Well, Bronwen Maddox, same question to you, in fact. What do you think of the government's performance today?
I think they've done two big things right. The big economic package, it was enormous, it was pretty quick, and getting the lockdown in place. Now, some people may have said that was later than it should have been, and we'll look back and we'll make that judgment. But they did get that and the legislation through. What I think has let them down is the protective equipment for the NHS and the testing with it, all that procurement and getting that stuff out there. And then the communications, which I think has been pretty terrible in many places. A lot of stop-start, changes of direction. We're doing this. The Prime Minister saying right at the beginning, I'm shaking hands, then he wasn't. We're going to tell people over 70 to do this, and so on. Yeah. So I think that really has let them down. But it's not all bad. And they have got the economic package out there, and that is a big plus. But this has been a bad week.
It's been a bad week. We saw Matt Hancock recover from COVID today. Obviously, Boris Johnson is still not here, and I wonder how important it is to have a clarity of message. And clearly, the strategy was to have this daily press conference at which they would deliver information each day which would be of value. Bronwen Maddox, do you think that has turned out to be so, or actually it's been quite counterproductive having press conferences at which you can either give a level of information or not that's trusted or not, but it's not actually been uniformly sound?
I think the problem is what you've just said, that it hasn't been uniformly sound, not the having of the daily communication. The government does need to communicate, and it needs to do so consistently, because it can only persuade people to stay in their houses and to go through this incredible transformation that the country is by bringing the public confidence along. But the problem is that any wobbles in that message then make people nervous.
Yeah, Craig Oliver, the business of the government overpromising and underperforming. The problem is the public understands when there is a lack of clarity, when there is a kind of uncertainty, and that only adds to fear and a lack of confidence in the government. How do they make sure that doesn't happen going forward?
Well, you know what? I think listening to this conversation, I'm reminded of the quote that everything's for the best in the best of all possible worlds. The reality of a government in a modern world of digital communications is it does need to communicate every day, and it does need to speak. You have to fill the vacuum or it will be filled for you. I think it's very easy to say about a government, you should be absolutely crystal clear all the time. The reality is all governments around the world are facing an enormous situation, which is there's no playbook for. Nobody's seen anything like this before. And to be fair to them, you also have been in a situation where the Prime Minister's been isolated and the Health Secretary's been isolated. I think that picking away like this is probably not fair. And the reality is they have got a grip. They have done a massive economic program that should hopefully work well. And I think that probably where the public is, you're asking where the public is probably in a different position to where journalists are. I think the public is more understanding than journalists perhaps are.
But, by and large, both the public and the media too has been hugely supportive. The political support has been a broad church of political support. But I wonder, Bronwen, if the strategy of having this press conference with Boris Johnson as a kind of presidential figure, which means that when he's not there, you're wondering who else will take it. And then there's been the absence of many people in the cabinet who could take it, who are clearly not trusted to go out. I mean, should there be a kind of sharper focus on key members in the cabinet, or should this be spread around, do you think?
I think it has been spread around. We have had the Chancellor delivering the economic bit. It's absolutely appropriate that Matt Hancock delivers the health message. The Prime Minister obviously can't at the moment. And in the end, all roads are going to lead back to the Prime Minister about the decisions taken. When there's a great stock taking of all this. Now, I don't think the choice of personnel has been the problem. It is, as Craig was saying, just an incredibly difficult series of decisions, and these are going to be a rough few weeks coming into for the government, with the deaths sadly rising probably much further.
Thank you both very much indeed.